in the book, and to me that's a very sad thing, that you can't remember your sister Olivia de Havilland having done anything warm or kind to you
in my childhood.
Hollywood's golden age was more than just royalty and cinematic masterpieces. Some of its biggest stars lived double lives, rivaling the most scandalous noir plots. From mob ties to acrimonious rivalries that last decades, here are 20 Golden Age actors with the most horrifying secret lives.
I don't know what it's like to watch somebody you love just crumble away bit by bit, day by day, in front of your eyes.
Number 20. Judy Garland. Hailed as one of the most talented young actresses in Hollywood's golden age, it's safe to say the thespian was an era-defining superstar. Her talent endeared audiences, captivated millions of Americans across the country, and racked in mega bucks, yet there was plenty of chemical assistance. Yes, you heard right. Like most of MGM's biggest assets, Garland was forced to take drugs to cope with her exhausting workload. What's worse? She started when she was just a teenager. Garland was given amphetamines to keep up her energy levels and control her weight, with sleeping pills used to ensure she got a good night's sleep. And her mother was aware of everything. Can you imagine? Adding to the horror, studio head Louis B. Mayer also made her subsist on 80 cigarettes a day, chicken soup, a diet of black coffee, and pills every 4 hours just so she could maintain her slender frame. Rainbow diet pills, a mix of stimulants and sedatives, became a full-fledged epidemic in the 1960s, leading to the Controlled Substances Act in the next decade. Sadly, Hollywood had already moved on to other evils like cocaine. Number 19. Spade Cooley. Remember Spade Cooley, guys? Of course you do. At the height of his fame, he wasn't just a country music legend, he seemed to have it all. Record-breaking albums were nothing to him, and he featured in movies and TV shows. But, as they say, the brightest lights often cast the darkest shadows. Behind the scenes, Cooley struggled to cope with the pressures of fame. His paranoia grew and his temper flared at the slightest provocation. This toxic combination reached a boiling point when he became convinced that his second wife, Ella May, was unfaithful. What happened next would forever overshadow his career and leave a dark stain on his legacy. Overcome by rage, he assaulted his wife with such ferocity and for such a prolonged time that she succumbed to her injuries. Can you imagine the sheer brutality? Ella May's tragic death shocked the nation, and Cooley's trial became a media sensation, drawing massive crowds to the courtroom. In August 1961, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. You might want to sit tight for this next one. It's a story so shocking, so unbelievable, that it might just leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Trust me, you're not ready for what's coming.
Thus proving my point that Hamming is not overacting. It is false acting.
Number 18. Orson Welles. Right off the bat, this one's more speculative than concrete, so take it with a pinch of salt. Remember when the gruesome image of Elizabeth Short's lifeless body sent shockwaves across the nation in 1947? Well, there's a pretty big reason why it's one of the most infamous murders in American history. It's been unsolved to this day, and there have been many conspiracy theories that still haunt us. Of all the Black Dahlia suspects that's been theorized, perhaps the most surprising one is also the most famous, acclaimed director and actor Orson Welles. Yes, that Orson Welles, the creative genius behind Citizen Kane. In her 1999 book, Childhood Shadows: The Hidden Story of the Black Dahlia Murder, Mary Pacios brought Welles into the spotlight with startling claims. She argued that Welles may have suffered from a diphasic personality disorder, a condition some link to violent tendencies in serial killers. Her reason? A creepy magic act Welles performed in the 1940s, where Welles pretended to saw a woman in half, and a series of mutilated mannequins he designed for the 1947 film The Lady from Shanghai. Though the mutilated mannequins were not used in the film, they bore eerie similarities to Elizabeth Short's injuries and were designed just 3 months before her murder. In the end, though, the Black Dahlia suspects on this list are simply that, suspects. To this day, no one has been formally charged with Elizabeth Short's murder, and that's what makes it one of the most fascinating and unsettling unsolved homicides of the 20th century. But hey, what do you think? Could Pacios have been right all along? Or is Wells's name yet another folktale born in the Hollywood Hills? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Number 17. Larry Parks. From humble beginnings in Kansas to his breakout role in The Jolson Story, Parks became one of the most cherished Golden Age actors, and he won over millions across the globe with his talent. He was even nominated for an Academy Award. But as amazing as his rise was, his fall was just as epic. At the height of his fame, Parks's name was listed during the House Un-American Activities Committee's investigations. He was called to testify in 1951, and although he pleaded not to testify, he ultimately did so in tears and disclosed the name of his former colleagues to the committee. The repercussions were devastating and immediate. Hollywood's major studios, keen to distance themselves from anyone tainted by accusations of communist sympathy, shelved projects tied to his name and shut him out for future roles. The man who had once commanded $75,000 per film was instantly crumbled under the weight of the blacklist. By the end of that fateful year, Parks' once promising trajectory was entirely derailed. The blacklist effectively erased him from the public eye, and his acting career faded into obscurity.
And what about the gallant commander? You were about to give me a piece of your mind.
I was about to do no such thing. I don't attack women.
Except behind their backs.
Number 16. Tallulah Bankhead. Long before the industry began a witch hunt on strong-willed actresses, Tallulah Bankhead personified the term. Whether on stage, screen, or in her offstage life, Bankhead had a penchant for being scandalous. It was almost like she lived for the moment. Worse, she was incredibly hedonistic. She openly indulged in alcohol and cocaine, and her unapologetic discussions of her sexual exploits left many clutching their pearls in an era defined by rigid social mores. Remember her infamous comment about starring in the 1932 film Devil and the Deep? No? She openly confessed she acted in the movie for the sole reason of shooting steamy scenes with Gary Cooper. Away from the silver screen, Bankhead's love life was a whirlwind, with rumored affairs spanning Hollywood's biggest names, both male and female. And while the public and press reveled in her provocations, the controversial Bankhead embraced the chaos, never once apologizing for living life entirely on her terms. It's not exactly horrifying to us, the viewers, but for the studios, it was a total nightmare. Bankhead's wild, unfiltered personality made her a box office draw, but it also created countless PR disasters that kept studio executives up at night. She was a superstar, and her success made her too valuable to drop, but also too unpredictable to control. Speaking of scandals, here's a more chaotic story. Number 15. Joan Crawford. If you thought Tallulah Bankhead's hedonistic escapades were unmatched in Hollywood, brace yourself for the jaw-dropping double life of Joan Crawford. Born Lucille Lesueur, Crawford, much like the studio she worked with, was obsessed with creating the image of a perfect, mysterious woman. She was so in tune with her plans that she refused to reveal her exact birth year, letting ambiguity shroud her early years. But this was only the tip of the iceberg. Before her meteoric rise to fame, Crawford starred in explicit content she would later go to great lengths to erase from public memory. You see, when Crawford made it big, somebody somewhere sensed exploiting her past was a money-making opportunity, with testimony from Crawford's former husbands and the contents of FBI reports providing evidence that she'd made at least one film of a somewhat explicit nature, if you know what I mean. Wondering why it was kept out of the public? Well, that's because Crawford's home studio, MGM, quickly intervened and paid $100,000 to ensure it was hushed and kept out of public circulation. Though according to documents, the film had been passed around Hollywood's elite circles, further fueling the scandal. But here's where things get interesting. She survived the explicit scandal, but remained a regular feature in Hollywood gossip throughout her career. Number 14. Charlie Chaplin. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason why history fondly remembers Charlie Chaplin as one of the greatest figures in the history of the silent era. Now scratch that, in all of entertainment. However, for all his brilliance on the silver screen, Chaplin's personal life was so often painted with scandal and controversy. Take his tumultuous second marriage to Lita Grey, for instance. From start to finish, the union was doomed to fail. The silent actor married Grey when she was only a teenager, and rumors also circulated that she was pregnant, though this was later proven false. And the divorce court proceedings were nothing short of a spectacle. Grey described Chaplin as a controlling, abusive husband and an absentee father with a disturbing proclivity for much younger women. Can you believe that? A man seemingly perfect had such a contrasting double life. As the details of their toxic marriage spilled into the media, Chaplin's reputation as a beloved entertainer took a severe hit. Public sympathy largely turned against him, despite his cinematic achievements. Coming next is something equally surprising, probably even more.
Do you want something?
Yeah. I'd like a bottle of beer.
Beer's just in the bar.
Number 13, Marlon Brando. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about Marlon Brando? Is it his buttery smooth voice, chiseled body, or charming eyes? If you think of Marlon Brando in a positive light, it's only because you're unaware of the shocking wrongs he committed behind closed doors. Once again, everything you believed about Brando was nothing but a facade. First off, he struggled with severe mood disorder. It was so bad that he even earned a reputation for being difficult on the set, frequently refusing or struggling to learn his lines, and showing more interest in challenging the director with odd demands than following their guidance. And don't even get me started on the emotional abuse and manipulation of Rita Moreno faced during their tumultuous relationship. The worst of all was when Moreno recounted how Brando coerced her into an abortion when she became pregnant. The procedure was botched, leading to severe physical and emotional downturns. Yet Brando was still cheating on her all through. Wondering why she never left the relationship? Well, Moreno thought of her younger self as vulnerable and eager to please Brando, likening her behavior to that of a doormat. Number 12, Wallace Beery. Famous for having a larger-than-life persona, Wallace Beery was one of the most polarizing faces in the Golden Age. On set, his reputation preceded him, and not in a good way. Widely regarded as difficult and unpleasant, Beery seemed to revel in making his colleagues' lives harder. He refused to learn his lines and would instead crib elements from other actors' performances, sparking resentment when they called him out on his behavior. And it didn't end there. During scenes requiring close-ups of his co-stars, Beery would deliberately recite incorrect lines, throwing off their timing and making it nearly impossible for them to hit their marks. And guess what? Not even child actors were left out of it. In fact, they often bore the brunt of his unpleasantness. Jackie Cooper, who worked with him on several films, labeled him a big disappointment. He accused Beery of intentionally upstaging him and sabotaging his performances, which he believed stemmed from sheer jealousy. And then the craziest thing happened. In December 1937, comedic actor and founder of the Three Stooges, Ted Healy, was involved in a drunken brawl at Cafe Trocadero on the Sunset Strip. He was assaulted by three men, Albert Cubby Broccoli, Pat DiCicco, a mob associate and cousin of Broccoli, and surprise actor Wallace Beery. Tragically, Healy passed away shortly after. Though the cause of death was officially listed as nephritis, it was likely worsened by his injuries. But hey, would you believe no charges were brought against Beery or the other alleged perpetrators? The actor's career was untouched by the scandal, and he was posthumously inducted into Hollywood's Walk of Fame. Keep watching for more Hollywood surprises. Number 11, Alfred Hitchcock. While not an actor, Hitchcock's disturbing treatment of actresses under his belt, especially Tippi Hedren, is worth mentioning. At first, their collaboration was the stuff of legend. They worked on exceptional projects together, most notably The Birds and Marnie. But who would have guessed the behind-the-scenes reality was far less glamorous? Hedren detailed Hitchcock's obsessive and controlling behavior during their time working together. She accused him of unwanted sexual advances and creating a hostile work environment. On the set of The Birds, Hitchcock insisted using live birds for a pivotal attack scene, despite prior assurances they would be mechanical. This led to 5 grueling days where birds were thrown at Hedren. Often tied to her costume, causing significant physical and emotional distress. The ordeal left her exhausted and temporarily hospitalized when a bird pecked her near the eye. Like it wasn't bad enough, Hitchcock was said to be resistant to giving her time to recover, showing utter disregard for her well-being. It's like he just wanted the woman to suffer. Unsurprisingly, the toxicity extended beyond filming. After Hedren rejected multiple romantic advances from Hitchcock, he allegedly sabotaged her career by restricting her from taking roles with other studios. He also retained control over her contract and stalled her career post-Marnie. Like so many leading studio heads, Hitchcock was a sadistic streak who thrived on control and intimidation. After everything, he gifted Hedren's young daughter, Melanie Griffith, a doll modeled after her mother in The Birds, encased in a miniature coffin. Think you've seen it all, though? Stay tuned for the next chapter as we uncover yet another shocking story from the world of old Hollywood.
Getting at
Something could happen. You could make it happen. It's an idea, John.
Number 10. Barbara Payton. In her prime, Barbara Payton had the industry in her palms. With striking looks and a promising talent, she quickly rose to prominence, starring alongside legends like James Cagney in Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye. She was a true bombshell and loved by all. But do you know what led to her catastrophic downfall? As sad as it sounds, Payton was the architect behind her own demise. She made several poor choices, including developing an addiction and entering destructive relationships. Her fame was so often overshadowed by personal scandals, including her tumultuous relationship with actor Franchot Tone. It got worse when the heavily publicized and violent love triangle between Tone and actor Tom Neal resulted in Tone being severely beaten by Neal, leaving him hospitalized. This scandal tarnished her reputation and led to her eventual estrangement from Hollywood. By the mid-1950s, Barbara's career had collapsed, and she was turned to lesser roles abroad. As her career faltered, Payton became trapped in substance abuse, losing her professional opportunities and financial stability. Hollywood turned its back on her, and she struggled to make ends meet. By the 1960s, she had turned to escort services and was broke, a tragic contrast to her once glamorous life. Her memoir, I Am Not Ashamed, detailed her shocking descent, and personally, I think it's definitely worth a read if you haven't seen it yet. Payton died in 1967 at just 39 years old from a heart and liver failure while living with her parents. Please brace yourself as the next story takes an even darker turn. Number 9. Errol Flynn. Have you ever heard the phrase, "in like Flynn"? Of course you have. It's been a regular phrase for millions of Americans for years, and it all started with one man, Errol Flynn. Contrary to the heroic, swashbuckling image he portrayed in films like The Adventures of Robin Hood and Captain Blood, Errol Flynn's off-screen lifestyle was completely villainous. He was a notorious hedonist who frequently took part in parties, wild escapades, and reckless behavior that often left the industry in shock. Take, for instance, his home on Mulholland Drive. It was beautiful, majestic, and fitting for a man as rich and powerful as Errol Flynn. Yet it was infamous as a party house, regularly hosting a mix of Hollywood stars, gamblers, and hangers-on. Matching the host, the social gatherings were infamous for their wildness and sometimes bizarre atmosphere, with features like secret passageways and hidden mirrors. As you can probably guess, Mr. Flynn was a frequent subject of scandal, most notably the highly publicized trial in 1942, where he was accused of assaulting 2 girls. Though he was later acquitted, the trial took a huge chunk of his reputation, and many believed his legal battles were merely the tip of the iceberg when it came to his countless exploits. Number 8. Frank Sinatra. Hollywood hotshot, Academy Award-winning actor, and the leading figure of the Rat Pack. Frank Sinatra was a man who could do it all and more. He was wanted by everyone, both men and women. But it wasn't just his fans and critics who had an interest in him. The FBI did too. For over 40 years, the Bureau secretly tracked Sinatra. They compiled a massive dossier that chronicled not only his every move, but also his speech and association. Funny enough, his dance with the FBI started when rumors circulated that he paid a doctor $40,000 to avoid military service during World War II. While the FBI found his exemption legitimate, rumors about him dodging the draft lingered throughout his life and affected his career. Throughout his life, Sinatra denied having mob ties, but when his files were released after his death, it read like a who's who of organized crime figures. Get this. Sinatra was friends with notorious people like Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana, received gifts from mafia figures such as Joseph and Charles Fischetti, and was heavily connected to mafia events, like attending an Atlantic City club favoring Philadelphia mobster Angelo Bruno's daughter's wedding. Despite his ties, Sinatra was never prosecuted for any criminal activities. Before we go into the next tale, here's a quick question. What's the common denominator between Frank Sinatra and Jean Harlow?
You mean to tell me that you've been putting it over on me with some other man?
Yes, and what are you gonna do about it, you big...
Number 7. Jean Harlow. Speaking of mob ties, Jean Harlow, much like Frank Sinatra, had her life clouded by rumors involving such connections. In her heyday, Harlow was known as the blonde bombshell whose drop-dead gorgeous face and voice serenaded American screens. Alas, the bright star was eventually eclipsed by countless shadows of scandal. You see, one of the most notable aspects of her personal life involved the mysterious death of her second husband, Paul Byrne. His death in 1932, which was officially ruled as willful, sparked widespread speculation. Many whispered that Byrne may have been unalived by an actress called Dorothy Millette, who was his lover. Take that with a pinch of salt, though. Harlow's personal relationships were equally turbulent. Rumors of affairs and entanglements with powerful men, including influential figures within Hollywood and beyond, began to circulate. And her third marriage to cinematographer Harold Rawson ended in under a year. Interestingly, at the start of her career, Harlow had a brief relationship with gangster Abner Zwillman, during which he gifted her a jeweled bracelet, a red Cadillac, and even made a large cash loan to studio head Harry Cohn to secure a 2-picture deal for her at Columbia Pictures. However, their relationship ended after Zwillman allegedly used derogatory and vulgar language when speaking about her to other crime figures, as uncovered in secret surveillance recordings. She died at the age of 26 from kidney failure in 1937, fueling further gossip and intrigue. She would have been an all-timer had she lived longer. Number 6. Robert Mitchum. When Robert Mitchum got arrested in 1948 for marijuana possession, Hollywood was shocked to the core. Just 3 years before the infamous incident, Mitchum was at the peak of his career, was one of the industry's leading men, and had just featured in the smashing hit The Story of G.I. Joe. However, his reputation took a hit when he was arrested after a police raid at a party where he was caught smoking marijuana. He was sentenced to 60 days in a prison farm. At first, everything seemed lost. No one thought his career and marriage could make a comeback. But hey, Mitchum dug deep and pushed through in film noir classics like Out of the Past and Cape Fear. They were just as engaging as the story of G.I. Joe and proved that Mitchum was far from a one-trick pony. His marriage, though? Safe and sound. Mitchum's wife was another hero in the story. She stood by him during the scandal, and they reconciled after his release. In any case, Mitchum was able to survive one of the darkest chapters of his career and life. It shows that no matter how dark the clouds are, there's always a silver lining.
I've never seen you so beautiful.
Number 5. Gene Tierney. It's no secret that Gene Tierney's first daughter, Daria, was born with severe disabilities, including partial blindness, hearing loss, and developmental delays. News broke immediately. The discovery was made, and the actress herself was very open about it. In fact, she publicly acknowledged the challenges of her daughter's ailment, which has long been attributed to congenital rubella syndrome. But hey, haven't you ever wondered how it happened? I mean, you didn't think it was just a random coincidence, right? Well, the story goes that Tyrney actually contracted rubella while attending a public event, a Hollywood canteen fundraiser for troops during World War II. Not that it was her fault, though. Tyrney was hugged by a fan who had recently escaped quarantine for the illness, unknowingly exposing the actress to the virus. Can you imagine how devastating that is? Tyrney was only attending a fundraiser for a noble cause. She did absolutely nothing wrong. Daria's tale is easily one of the saddest mentions on our list so far. It's one that still startles us to this very day.
More Wolfbane. More effective than Wolfbane, Count. Indeed.
Number 4, Bela Lugosi. Come on, guys, you didn't think we were going to leave Lugosi out of our list, did you? In 1927, Lugosi took the world by storm for his role of Count Dracula in a Broadway adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel. After making it to Hollywood, he went on to star in the iconic 1931 film adaptation of Dracula, directed by Todd Browning and produced by Universal Pictures. Throughout the 1930s, he became a prominent figure in horror cinema, but perhaps his fame as Dracula preceded him. His distinctive Hungarian accent significantly restricted his opportunities, and he had a long streak of unsuccessful attempts to escape typecasting. Down the line, Lugosi developed an addiction when he began to use prescribed morphine and methadone to manage sciatic neuritis. Sadly, his newfound dependency, coupled with his worsening alcoholism, became evident to producers. Following his role in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein in 1948, his career opportunities declined, limiting him to roles in low-budget films. Some of these were directed by Ed Wood, including a brief appearance in Plan 9 from Outer Space, which was released posthumously in 1957. Lugosi passed away from a heart attack on August 16, 1956, at the age of 73. He died peacefully in his sleep in his Los Angeles apartment, with his wife, Hope, discovering him later that evening. And no, despite the rumors, Lugosi was not clutching the script for Ed Wood's planned project, The Final Curtain, at the time of his death. Number 3, Lana Turner. Remember when Lana Turner's tumultuous relationship with mobster Johnny Stompanato reached its shocking climax in April 1958? Yep, it was like the world suddenly stopped, with billions in the world eagerly anticipating what was going to happen to Turner's 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, when she stabbed him during a violent altercation at their home. It sounds bad on paper, but slow your roll for just a second. According to court testimony, Crane acted in self-defense to protect her mother from Stampanato's threats and physical abuse. The killing was ruled justifiable homicide, and Cheryl was acquitted, though the case was met with heavy publicity. To add to the intrigue, reports allege that Stompanato, who was actually a known associate of mobster Mickey Cohen, had been blackmailing and using extortion tactics against Turner. Some theories, as explored in the book A Murder in Hollywood, The Untold Story of Tinseltown's Most Shocking Crime by Casey Sherman, suggest Turner may have wielded the knife herself and allowed her daughter to take the blame, as Cheryl's age could mitigate legal consequences. Though it's purely speculative, you'd be hard-pressed not to admit it's a pretty shocking twist that might just be close to the truth. But of course, it's Hollywood. We're probably never going to know what really went down.
Didn't I meet you in Tijuana?
You did not?
Of course not. How silly of me. But it was a girl that looked exactly like you. She had a little dimple right there.
Number 2, William Haynes. Ever heard the saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going? Well, William Haynes did just that, literally. Despite being one of Hollywood's biggest stars in the 1920s and 1930s, William Haynes couldn't beat the industry's refusal to accept his openly gay relationship. While it may sound horrifying to you on paper, can you just imagine for a second how traumatic it must have been for the actor? Stars were expected to conform to a heteronormative image, and Haynes was supposed to be no exception. He was told to leave his partner or walk away from the industry. Want to know what he did next? Rather than deny his homosexuality, he took in all of the heat from MGM and left the industry in 1935. It was a move that was seemingly unthinkable for most actors at the time. Yet he refused to be silenced or forced into obscurity. After his career in Hollywood, Haynes later focused on a new venture as an interior designer. Thankfully, he regretted nothing. His business thrived for decades, and he got a lot of success from it. The best part? It was all on his terms. There was no contract, no studio executive, and certainly no man telling him how to live his life. Perhaps we can learn a thing or two from Haynes' book, Bravery and Courage. Number 1. Joan Fontaine, Olivia de Havilland. In another world, Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine could have been the ultimate dream team, two sisters who ruled Hollywood. But sadly, it just wasn't to be. Although Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine were born just 15 months apart and both achieved success in Hollywood's golden age, their similarities only fueled a rivalry that began in childhood and lasted throughout their lives. Olivia and Joan didn't get along as children. The younger sister, Joan, felt Olivia was favored by their mother. While they occasionally played together, their interactions were often filled with conflict, including slaps and hair-pulling from both parties. Joan later accused Olivia of destroying her old clothes to prevent them from being passed down, and even claimed that Olivia broke her collarbone during an attempt to pull her into a swimming pool. But while you'd be mistaken to chalk off the aggression from both parties as juvenile delinquency, it actually got worse with age. They were in constant competition for the same roles and the favor of Hollywood power brokers. To make things worse, the press fueled their differences. Their animosity reached its peak after Fontaine's win over de Havilland at the Academy Awards in 1942, when Fontaine won for her role in Suspicion. De Havilland, who had long been considered the more accomplished actress of the two, was reportedly devastated by this loss. The sisters reportedly had a strained relationship for the rest of their lives, with both refusing to reconcile despite several attempts by mutual friends. So there you have it, 20 of the most shocking double life stories in Golden Age history. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and tell us in the comments which revelation surprised you the most. But don't leave just yet, there's still more to discover. Be sure to check out the video currently displaying on your screen.